For decades, the world has been fighting a war on hunger, a war in which many people have fought in with more casualties than successes. Many battle plans have been drawn, but they've only caused momentary relief. But today, we are drawing a new battle plan, and you all are the soldiers, and by the time you leave, you will have the knowledge to fight and to win this war. So we're gonna take it back, and I want you guys to think back to when you're in high school. Now, for some of you, you're in high school now, so it's not that hard, but for others, it may have been a while. So think back to the best class that your school ever had to offer. Lunch. The long lines, the cafeteria tables, the mystery meat, and the cookies. Now, I want you guys to raise your hand if you've ever seen, or maybe you've done it yourself, someone throw away some unopened milk straight down the trash. Raise your hand if you've ever seen someone throw away some fruit that they didn't even touch. Now, raise your hand if you've ever seen someone walk out of the line, pick up 2 or 3 things off their tray, and then drop the rest down the trash. See, for me, it's an everyday occurrence. I look back at the tables, and there's food sitting there ready to be thrown away. Now, I'm not here to talk about the cleaning habits of teenagers, but I'm here to talk about the potential of that food. And I know from experience that there is so much potential. So for about 2 years now, I've been working on a program called Food Recovery, which has the ability to collect food waste and give it to our community. So what exactly is food recovery? Well, food recovery is a program that collects uneaten, prepackaged foods like milks, cereals, bananas, fruit cups, things that people would normally throw away. And instead, it's collected and picked up by an organization to feed the community. So here's how it works. The bell for each lunch rings, and hungry teenage students come in ready to eat anything and everything that they can get their hands on. And sitting in the middle of the cafeteria is a cooler, and the cooler is filled with ice, and this is where the food is being set down. At the end of each lunch, our exceptional children, our EC students, or members of Students' Congress come in and they pick up the food and take it to a fridge that is set aside specifically for food recovery. The food then sits there and it waits for an organization to come and pick it up, and they go back and redistribute it out to the community. Now, I've been working on this for 2 years now, and the amounts of food that we've been having is astounding. And surprisingly, food recovery is not a program that many schools have across America. According to the USDA, only these states have schools that have a food recovery, and thanks to East Meck, North Carolina is one of the newest states to be on that map. So why should a school have a food recovery program? Well, there's 3 main reasons why. The first is an obvious one. It prevents food waste from being collected in landfills. And what most people don't know is when food sits in landfills, it starts to break down and it produces methane gas, which is 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide and methane gas are both big contributors to greenhouse gases, which, as you guys know, is a big contributor to hurting the environment. Second is it helps relieve student hunger. And in this way, people have the chance to go back to that cooler and grab an extra milk or an extra fruit cup to eat, and this will help sustain their hunger throughout the day. And finally, it helps relieve community hunger. And this is when the organization comes and they redistribute the food out to other places. So in order to understand why so much food is being wasted in schools, you have to understand the process of buying school lunches. When you buy a lunch, your tray has to consist of certain items. It has to have a meat, a fruit, a vegetable, and other foods that consist a healthy meal. So generally, there's something on that tray that someone's not going to want to eat. So in order to better explain this, I came up with a scenario for you guys that represents the 3 common types of students I see at lunch. First off, we have an average student who buys free or reduced lunch, and let's say by the end of lunch they've eaten some of their rice and chicken and their fruit cups and drank some of their milk, but they didn't have a chance to get to their salad or their cookies. We're going to call him Average Joe. Now, second, we have a student who represents an athlete or just hungry teenagers with high metabolism rates, and the food he's getting on his tray isn't enough to sustain him throughout the day. He's not looking forward to how hungry he's going to be in math class or at his track meet. We're going to call him Hungry Harry. And finally, we have a very picky eater, and she only wants to eat like a salad and some fruit, but she's required to get the whole tray in order to get that. And we're going to call her Picky Peggy. So Picky Peggy and Average Joe have something in common. There is something on that tray that they are not going to eat. So in the case of Peggy, she only wanted the fruit cup and the salad. So everything else she wants to throw away, but now she can set it aside. And in the case of Average Joe, he just didn't have enough time to eat his meal. So this is where food recovery comes in. It gives a chance for Joe and for Peggy to put aside the food that they normally would throw away in the cooler, and then we can have someone like Harry come in and grab that extra food that would have been thrown away. And this is going to help his hunger throughout the day, and he's going to be a better student and a better athlete. And this way, everyone's happy. So at this point, most of you may be thinking, wow, why don't schools have these programs? And that's exactly what I thought when I first found out about such a thing. And this is why. When someone approaches administration or staff and they say, hey, I've noticed a lot of food being thrown away. Why don't we do something about it? The first thing that they're told is that they can't do it. And not only that they can't do it, but they're not allowed to. And they may be thinking, what if someone was to get sick off of the food? Are we going to be held liable? Which is a perfectly legitimate fear. But I'm here to tell you that not only are you allowed to do it, but we're protected by law. October 1st, 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, which states that if any person or group wants to donate apparently wholesome food with good intent, they will be protected from civil and criminal liability. So let's read between the lines. This means that if a group or a person wants to donate food that hasn't been tampered with, they are allowed to, and they will be exempt from liability. There you go. That solves that issue right there. So in the act, it doesn't specifically mention schools, but schools are probably the best place to collect food waste. According to Food Rescue, which is an organization based in Indiana that works to put food recovery programs across schools, schools throw away a total of 1 billion food items every year. So let's bring it back home, something you guys are familiar with. East Meck has been able to collect up to 4,100 food items since August 2015 when we started our school year. And we're projected to collect about 5,000 more, or a total of 5,000 by the end of the school year, which is no small feat. So I'm sitting here looking at the number 5,000, and I'm wondering, this is only one school. What if every school had a food recovery program? So let's think about it. In CMS, there are about 181 schools, and this includes middle schools, high schools, and elementary schools, but it doesn't include daycares, colleges, or private schools. So if all 181 schools had a program, imagine how much food we can save. Let's take it one step further. CMS, after all, is only one school system in North Carolina, and I personally counted there are about 245 school districts that make up North Carolina. So imagine if all the schools within those districts had a food recovery program, how much food we could save. Now, let's take it one step further. After all, North Carolina is only one state out of 50. What if all the states across America had a food recovery program? How much food that we could save? So I did a bit of math based off of the average of East Meck's food, and if every school in every state, in every district, had a food recovery program, we would be able to collect 11.5 billion food items every year. If this number isn't big enough to scare you, I'll put it into perspective. 2014, 46.5 million people were food insecure and in poverty across America, which means that they didn't know where their next meal was going to be coming from. And while this was happening, schools are throwing away 11.5 billion food items. Do you guys see the problem? It's insane. It's ridiculous. And we need to do something about it. And it's imperative that every school begins a food recovery program instantly. So I've been working on this, as I mentioned, for 2 years, and people have approached me and said, what you're doing is amazing. I remember when I was in school, and I would see all this food being thrown away, and I always wondered why we didn't do something about it. And I would stand there with a smile on my face, and a voice in my head would say, with all due respect, why didn't you do something? And what I've come to realize is that the burden of change is on the younger generation. After all, we're always being told that the young generation is going to fix the problems of the older generations. We're always being told that we can fix the world, but that doesn't mean that we have to wait till they're gone. In fact, I like the older generation very much. I don't want to see that happen. Grassroots is what our civics and economics teacher, Mrs. Dice, who's sitting in the crowd today, would always start off our class with. she would look us in the eye and she would say, change starts from the bottom. It's you guys who will make a difference. Us, the younger generation. And honestly, anybody can make a difference. But we are probably the best ones. And I've got 3 reasons why. We're stubborn, we're persistent, and we are so good at faking our way through any situation. My fellow students, you guys know exactly what I mean, and I'm sure your teachers and parents agree. We aren't just the future. We are now, and we have the potential to change the world, the same way that the food that gets wasted has the potential to end hunger. I encourage you guys to go back to your workforces, and even if you guys are students here at East Meck, go back to your middle schools, your elementary schools, and take this knowledge and help me fight to win this war against hunger. Because if we don't work together to make a change, then who will? Thank you.